Welcome to Best Friends in Franchising. I'm Morgan Noller.
And I'm Kathryn Allen.
If you're interested in franchising a new opportunity or diversifying your portfolio, you've come to the right place. We talk myths, money, mindset, and everything in between. Let's dive in. All right, welcome back to Best Friends in Franchising. Today we are going to touch on the top 5 questions that we frequently get asked as franchise consultants. We get these most weeks, I would say, maybe weekly, maybe monthly. What do you think, Kathryn?
Yeah, these are the top 5 questions that we rounded up from 2025. So now we're going to bring them to you and hopefully answer some questions that, you may have been having as well. First question, should you buy an existing business or invest in a franchise? I get this one a lot.
Me too. As franchise owners, Kathryn and I can tell you we obviously invested in a franchise. However, since owning my franchise, I have looked into buying other businesses, trying to expand what I currently own into different brands, and it can be quite messy. There are situations when you could come in, buy a business, and it's well run and bookkeeping's going well, profit and loss statements are up to date. Very rarely is that the case. In my mind, I was buying another job, not another business. So I highly recommend buying a franchise versus buying a business. And again, if there is a business available to buy, most likely the person in that territory next door that's already a franchise owner, if it's a current franchise business that you're looking at buying, they're going to be buying it. Usually they're not up for sale on the open market. It's something that's kind of absorbed from corporate or with another franchisee. Just be wary of that. If it is up for sale, there might be a reason why. That's not always the case, but it was the case in what the businesses I was looking at. The books were messy. The asking price was really high. I could easily have bought another franchise for a lot less than the business that I was looking at. So think about that as like a cost analysis too. Do you want to invest in something that you can build from the ground up and make it organized and crisp and clean? Or do you want to buy a business that might be a little bit messier for a higher cost? And then your first role as a business owner is a job trying to understand all the bookkeeping that's been done over years.
Yeah, and I think I'd throw in too, like I also get the question of should I just start my own thing, right? So, the big concept out there right now is buying a business for pennies on the dollar. Cody Sanchez is a big proponent of this. Love Cody Sanchez. But to what Morgan just said, a lot of the times what you're going to find is the books are messy. Like it's a small business, right? So depending on who the operator was and how organized, like they probably, who knows, but oftentimes it's not, they're asking too much and the books are a mess. So it's really hard to really get a firm valuation of the business. So there's that. Then there's a question of, well, why don't I just start my own thing? I'm really passionate about this. And I get that a lot. And here's my thought is, why don't you start with a franchise? Because for me, for a lot of us, coming from, let's call it corporate America or whatever we're coming from, the role that you typically play in a corporate world is pretty siloed and pretty segmented. Like it's a very focused thing. I actually felt like I was a pretty big generalist in what I did, and I learned a lot. And I think that has actually done me well in Soccer Stars and helped propel me to a top producer, because I did learn so much over the course of 13 years across sales and marketing and brand and business development and customer service and operations. But many times if you're coming from the corporate world, you're very, siloed into a specific role and function. And so what happens is when you want to go out and start a business, that is a huge learning curve, even for someone like me who is more of a generalist. Starting your own business, it's not for the faint of heart. It is a lot. And what makes it a lot, in my opinion, at the beginning is you're learning a new industry typically or business, and then you are having to transition cross-functionally across different roles. So I came from more of a marketing background. In business development is probably where I would have put myself, communication, but and maybe operations as well, but like the financial piece, the legal piece, the HR, cash flow, like all that stuff was not my world. And it was a huge learning curve. So if you think about coming in and you want to start a business, there's just so much. But if you start with a franchise business, you're buying into a proven business model with a support team, a leadership team that is going to innovate. They're going to keep you accountable. And so you're going to be able to learn so much about how to run a business from investing in a franchise that you can build and scale, then put in a manager. And then, hey, if you want to still go over here and start your own thing, do it. You can. Now you're much better equipped. You're much more likely to succeed because now you know how to run a business, over here, even if the industry is totally different. So that's my thought, is just I'm all in on the investing in a franchise.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think even though I didn't come from corporate America, I was my own boss and I did,
Mhm.
big corporate events and I did interior design and wore a lot of hats, it still wasn't enough. So I agree. Like, even if you have been your own boss, and I did really feel strongly that I could just go and start my own business, and I did, and it was fine. But in order to scale and grow, you'll never scale and grow as fast as you will with a franchise. It just won't happen because you've got an entire support team set up, like Kathryn talked about, versus like doing all the research yourself. There's other people out there that have already done the research. They've maybe made those mistakes, and you have an entire team to talk to and learn from each other. So Kathryn and I both own Soccer Stars. Do we run it the same? Not really, kind of different. So it's really nice to be able to talk to other franchisees, like Kathryn and I talking to each other and trading secrets of what worked and what didn't work. And so you wouldn't have that if you just started your own business. You just wouldn't. And most likely, I hear this a lot, if you did start your own business, you're probably looking to brick and mortar and haven't even thought about home-based services or running a company out of your house. So there's just so many opportunities out there. I think that franchising is the top choice for sure.
Yeah. And just thinking of like the playbooks you're buying into, the systems, the marketing, content creation and development. Like, as someone who's a marketer, marketing just takes time and it's so important. You're not going to grow your business without marketing. And again, as a person who is a marketer, if I had started a business, like to build out everything needed for marketing, the cost of that and the time it would take, as again, someone who knows how to do this, it would be exponential. I mean, just that alone would probably cost $100,000, and I don't know, like 100 hours, 200 hours. So I just think like just that in itself, like so many of these franchise systems have the marketing dialed in. They have in-house marketing teams or they have preferred agencies. They are doing it for you. And it's like plug and play and go. Cause like that's, the digital marketing piece of every business is like they have that figured out. It's a plug and play go. And then the time back that you save there can go into the sales and the business development that is also needed to grow the business. But obviously, as an owner, like your focus should be on that, right? Working on business.
And you just mentioned something about time too, and like money. And we talked about this before on a different podcast. I was thinking about going and getting my master's. I was like, maybe that's the next step. Maybe I need a master's in business and starting there, but this is the best master's you could ever have. And it probably won't cost as much. And depending on what franchise you buy, you could be saving money, and it's real life experience, real money. And you have to learn on your really fast. You have to learn on your feet.
And let's say you get into it and you buy a franchise and you're like, you know what, this isn't for me. Then what, Morgan? What happens? Because that's a question we get a lot. What if I pick the wrong franchise?
Yes, because it seems very permanent. You look at the FDD, it's talking about a 10-year commitment. A lot of franchise owners out there, like McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, you see they've been in it for years and years. You're thinking, how long do I have to do this? And if it's not the right fit, if it's not working out, you can get out of it. That's a common misconception that you're locked in for life, and you really are not locked in for life. It is a business. You can sell the business when you want to.
Absolutely. And that's like, again, the beauty of franchising, because you have an entire then network of franchise owners that can buy your territory. I mean, if you want to get out, you have acquisition partners right there within the network. And if there's not one there, then you can go outside the network and that's fine. So how much money do I really need to buy a franchise? I get this one a lot. What do you
And let's break down like what that means. So like
what that means?
Yeah, because like to buy a franchise is like a pretty general idea, but to break it down, it's not just the total upfront cost of the franchise fee. We're talking about what does it cost to open this franchise, run the franchise, pay for any tech and marketing fees up front. Any of those initial costs is what we're talking about when we talk about how much do you really need to run the franchise. For Soccer Stars, we broke even fairly quickly, so it's a little bit different model than some of the other ones. But yeah, Kathryn, let's talk about what is that kind of average range of what we need to invest in a franchise?
Yeah. So I think I like how you just said break it down. The breakdown. The
Mm,
breakdown is the initial franchise fee, which I would say in this day and age is around $60,000, like
typically.
50, 60,000 typically. Then you have the initial, which is encapsulated in the initial investment. So you have the franchise fee, and that's essentially what you're paying to secure the territory. And then you have the initial investment and startup costs. So for us, like you said, Soccer Stars, we're a home based business. So a lot of our home services to businesses are also home based. So for Soccer Stars, it was, essentially just like equipment, the training and the like initial, yeah, it was just the equipment. So for us, I think the initial startup was like around 100,000, let's
Yep.
call it. And that's the low end. And then I would say on average, the higher, like on average, 100 to 300,000. For a larger brick and mortar concept, depending on where you are in the US, you might be looking at, four, five, six, 700,000, because you're taking into account the lease and for something that has heavy equipment. So when I say heavy equipment, that maybe doesn't make sense, but like something like a fitness, like Anytime Fitness or a Pilates, like anything that has a lot of equipment that you're buying, that's going to be a bigger build out. Like that makes sense. That's going to cost a lot more money versus a home based business won't be as much. So yeah, I
And
think
with that, yeah,
100,000.
I think that's about right. And I think that, 100, 200,000, 250,000, but keep in mind it's what are you trying to grow and how fast you're trying to grow it too? Because sometimes I get, well, I only have like 30 to 50,000, but I really want to replace my 6-figure salary. There's a reality check there because you can't really replace your 6-figure salary if you're buying into a franchise lower than the average cost. That means that you're not going to really get a lot out of your investments. I remind clients to keep that in mind. Like if you're trying to replace your salary, you do have to initially invest in order to grow and scale to replace that salary. You can't just expect to buy into a very low end sort of almost like an add-on is what I would call it, like an add-on franchise, something that maybe you'd add in the future as like a smaller franchise on the side as your main franchise because it'll never get there. So the reason we want people to understand how much you have to have in order to invest is not because we're trying to get you to spend a bunch of money. It's because most likely you're trying to get some kind of income or get that ROI out from your investment so that it makes sense for you to even buy into the franchise. So that's why you need that much money is because you just won't be able to scale and grow.
Right. And like for me, just drawing on personal experience, like, and you too, like we came into this as an owner operator. So a lot of franchise systems, they call it owner operator model, where you're in there and you're doing the work and building the business and building the brand, which is really ideal in my opinion, because you're really setting the culture, the standard, like that is crucial. Now, how fast you get out of that can depend, but essentially with Soccer Stars, it was like for a lot of these brands, those first 18 months are crucial. You really kind of want to be all in on building the business, the brand, the people. And then once you get systems kind of flowing more smoothly, that's when you can step out and bring in a manager, right? Like, and it can be quicker. I brought my manager in after, 8 or 10 months, but I'm also still heavily involved in the business. And it just is a matter of like where I spend my time and where she spends her time. But for you, Morgan, and your business, and Steve, right, what does that look like?
Yeah, we're still very much the day to day. We've tried to hire a couple managers, but it's hard for us because no one sells the way that we do. And we aren't big enough really to hire the person that we would want to hire. So for us, we need to scale a little bit bigger. And then I think we'll be able to get the right person in. But we're still very much day to day, for sure, owner operator. So that's our goal in the future.
Yeah. Yep. And so we do have something called the financial readiness calculator, which when you work with us is really a helpful tool. And just to kind of high level walk you through what that kind of output looks like is it really you plug in, it takes, I don't know, more like 2 minutes maybe to do, two, three
Oh, yeah, very.
minutes. Yeah. A financial profile. So, like, what's your annual income? What are your liquid assets, your monthly expenses, monthly debt, credit score, home ownership. So, do you rent or own a home? And then what is your risk tolerance? Is it moderate? What does that look like? Then you're going to get a readiness assessment of available capital, survival fund of 18 months, SBA qualification. Are you not qualified, highly qualified, affordable franchises, like it'll output more options, loan qualification details, so SBA loan, what's the maximum loan amount, down payment requirement, interest rate range, loan terms, monthly payment, alternative financing. This could be ROBS. Okay, rollover. That stands for, what does that stand for, Morgan? I always forget.
That is when you take your rollover for business startup. So when you take your ROK, but you are using that to invest in something without the early withdrawal penalties or taxes. So it's a great way to do it. We see more and more people doing that every day.
I did it for Soccer Stars. So I borrowed against my husband's okay, you can do up to 50,000, which for me covered my franchise fee, which was perfect. So that is a great financing option. And then he pays that back through his paycheck. So that's, great option for financing. And then it gives you an investment capacity analysis. So what are those runway scenarios? 18-month conservative runway, 12-month moderate runway, and then investment capacity with financing. So it'll give you an output that will truly help us help you understand what is a good fit. Because at the end of the day, like for me, I was really stressed out because I didn't have enough runway, and I was trying to replace my salary at the beginning, and so I was racing as fast as humanly possible to build a business to get money that I could, contribute to my salary. And so what our hope is as franchise consultants is to help you understand, okay, what can you afford? And then what gives you enough runway so you're not dealing with the stress that I had to deal with. And that's where we can help. So that is, I think, what I have to say on buying,
And yeah. And then, like, speaking of that day to day, I think that perfectly rolls into our number 3 question that we get the most, which is, can it be an absentee or semi-absentee, or do I have to be involved in the business? And I think that's a really great question, because there's a lot of information out there. And I even see those ads. I'm, now that I talk franchising, of course, Meta's got me hooked. And so these ads are popping up constantly. There's different consultants out there, businesses talking about running a company, absentee, semi-absentee. Is that an option? And the truth of the matter is, maybe semi-absentee eventually, but not right away. Not if you want to be successful, at least for the first 12 to 18 months. Really, 18 months would be good, but you have to understand where you're replacing yourself, what you're asking your employees to do, and then step away and scale and hand it over to be semi-absentee. I definitely think that's a common misconception. Do you agree, Kathryn?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you want to build a solid foundation from which you can grow your business. So if you're starting a business half invested, semi absentee, I don't see how that business foundation is solid, right? Because no one is going to care about this business more than you. You are investing money. Why are you going to invest 150, 200, $300,000 in a business and be like semi involved at the beginning? It just doesn't really make sense. Like, if you really want to make this thing grow and flourish and thrive, like, you need to plant the seed and you need to water it. Like, it's very crucial at the beginning of any little plant. Let's use the plant analogy.
Not have a
That you're
green
giving
thumb.
it the love and the TLC, right? The TLC. So yeah, I think it's really important. I do think that there are different business models out there that are more simple and more complex. So I would say, again, we're going to go back to Soccer Stars, which Morgan and I do. Our business model is more complex, like a home-based business model, because we have the B2C and the B2B. The B2C is pretty simple in the sense of, like, I'm talking marketings. Again, like we said, with a lot of these systems, the consumer marketing is kind of a plug and play. The franchise system will handle it for you. They know what works. They have the best practices, the strategies, like, awesome, dialed in, good to go. The B2B is where it's like the owner or maybe a salesperson who's out there on the ground building the business. So for us, that looks like doing farmers markets. That's community events, wine festivals, wine and art festivals, like PTA stuff. There's just so many things. Like for us, it's going into preschools, it's going into elementary schools, it's going into Parks and Rec. So there's so much time that's needed to build the business on that B2B side, whereas the B2C is kind of more plug and play. Again, so we don't have a brick and mortar. If you had a brick and mortar and it's more B2C, I do think that's a simpler business model, something like a back nine where you have a
I was
key
gonna
card
say
and you
back
have,
nine.
right?
Great
Like
example.
low employee count. If it's a low employee count, simple business model, more B2C, yeah, I think you could go semi-absentee a lot more quickly.
But let's even think about like the Chick-fil-A, right? Like that's not
Okay.
one that we typically sell, but Chick-fil-A, if you're a franchise owner or an owner of a Chick-fil-A, you can't own another business. And they do expect you to work in it day to day. So the owners that we know in our local community, well, they're not in it, they do work on the business every day. Someone else is managing it. They do have a general
Yeah.
manager, but it still is not completely absentee. So when you look at it, I mean, I think Chick-fil-A is smart to do that. They're telling these people that are buying a Chick-fil-A and they're awarding, right? They award the Chick-fil-A to these people. They're saying, please don't own another business. So you really need to focus on this one business and help it scale and grow. And so they're even saying, don't be absentee. You have to be there and you have to
Yeah.
be able to scale and manage it and work on the business, even with a general manager.
Yeah. And I think, again, it comes back to like, what are your goals and how fast do you want to scale? If you want to scale faster, you're going to be more involved at the beginning and throughout. If you're okay with an investment of your money in a slower scale, then you probably could be a little more semi absentee because you're just not going to scale as fast. And that's okay. It's your business. You can do whatever you want to do. Again, beauty of franchising. It's your business. I wanted to scale as fast as possible to make enough money to bring in a manager. And Morgan is still working on the building process, right?
Yeah.
Because there's numbers involved here. And so, yeah, that was just my goal. And then I bought another unit and I'm expanding my franchise territory. And that's part of my goal. And that's what I want to do. So the beauty is it can be whatever you want it to be.
Absolutely. And so we kind of already talked about the what if I pick the wrong franchise, but that is a question we get a lot, and we've talked about it a little bit. But even use myself as an example with Soccer Stars, I can't buy any more territory near me, so I'm not selling my franchise. I don't think it's the wrong franchise, but if the person near me wanted to sell, I would definitely pick it up from them. So there's always an out. If it's not going to be another franchise owner nearby in your territory, you can look at what that profit and loss is. And I want to say it's like you take hopefully you have 5 years of data and then you just kind of triple whatever the annual revenue is. And that's how much your company is worth. But there's a lot of different ways to do it. So don't quote me on that. But typically that's what I've seen. And there's always an out. You're not locked in.
No, you're not. Last question that we get a lot, and Morgan, I think you're a good one to start with this answer is how important is territory selection?
More important than I ever realized. So I signed Soccer Stars about 2 months after a group had just bought 4 territories around the area or Sacramento area, Northern California. I bought what I could and I was very excited about it. Luckily, they were very generous and they traded one zip code for another zip code so I could have my hometown here in Granite Bay. And I'm very grateful for that because a lot of our business comes from this area right now. That being said, I can't actually expand or buy anything else. I'm really locked in California, like Texas, like Florida. This is a very big state, a very long state. So from the top of my territory to the bottom of my territory is about 4.5 hours if you were to drive the entire thing. So for me to have employees in one territory, I have to strategically hire in different cities and make sure they're willing to drive. If they have to drive 45 minutes to an hour, are they willing to do that? Hopefully they don't have to, but there could be a case when I need someone to coach a class and they do have to drive quite far. So just keep that in mind. I didn't drive the territory before signing. Granted, I would have signed anyway because it was sold, so I didn't have much of a choice there. But drive your territory, take a look at the demographics. Usually your corporate team will help you with that. You'll get that ahead of time so you'll understand kind of what the population looks like. But when you sign, that is your territory. So luckily, Soccer Stars was very kind to help me negotiate a little bit, but not every franchise or will be as generous as they were.
Yeah, and I would just say so for my territory for soccer stars, I was very lucky because it's a very densely populated territory, and that has absolutely contributed to my growth and my success. And so, it is so important. Morgan and I are here to help you think through that. I have a few clients right now on the territory. When you go through the franchise process, they will have a call. Usually it's something like territory design or mapping your territory. That's what it would probably be called, mapping your territory. And so, I do think it's important. Ideally, your territory, you are in your territory. Like Morgan said, she swapped out her zip code. You want to think about your connections and who you know. So I know there's times when people move to a new place and you're building that. But if you've lived in a place for a long time or have a network, for me, Soccer Stars made a lot of sense because my kids were 4 and 5 at the time. And I thought about, oh my gosh, I know all these moms and they're always looking for things for their kids to do. And so it was crucial to me that I have the territory of where I live and where my kids go to school, because that is my initial network, and that's where I started, and I grew out from there. And these territories that I've added in, I don't know people, and so I need to rely more heavily on digital marketing because I don't know that area as well. And so it's just a smart move when you're designing your territory. Hopefully you can have it in the area that you live and build it out from there. Absolutely look at demographics, understand who your customer is and what those numbers look like. And again, the franchisor will do a good job helping you map this out, but just make sure you're really doing your due diligence and your market research because it's important. And I was going to say something else. You want to think, so Morgan, when she bought her territory, they had sold right before she signed the territory surrounding her. For me, I knew, like I just said, I didn't buy my second territory until I was about 2 years in because I didn't have the money to do so. And I needed to make enough money in order to invest in expansion. And so, one thing I did ask though, when I was getting started, was could I have the first right of refusal? So they knew that I wanted to expand. I just wasn't able to financially yet. And so they came to me. I could, if someone was looking at that territory, they would come to me, hey, Kathryn, they're looking at this territory. And so I would have a heads up. And that's when I started knowing it was time to expand because people were getting more interested in that. And that was kind of my push to get there. So asking for a first right of refusal, if that's not possible, you may want to start with 2 units. If you know you want to build an empire and you want to expand, which, the best way to do it is get in there, get really good at what you're doing, start with that 1 unit and then expand out. But if you know it's going to go and people are going to buy territories around there, I would start with 2 units. I would lock it down. Don't you agree?
I do agree because if you're buying into the right franchise, most likely that franchise isn't going to be there next year. Someone else
No.
will buy it for sure. And the ones we talked about on the last podcast that were hot in 2025 and were selling really well, they're still going to be selling really well in 2026, but that might be it for some of those brands. Crumble cookies, you can't buy a Crumble cookies right now. Those have been sold out forever. There's no more territory left. So I still get phone calls about crumbles and I have to very gently guide them towards something else because most of the territories that they're talking about, that's been sold. So
Or even Orange Theory. We have Orange Theory in our portfolio now. And, unfortunately, most of those really, the good markets are sold out.
absolutely.
So,
And I will say, like, these are the top 5, but I will say that the other question I do get a lot, and Kathryn and I like to do validation calls for soccer stars whenever we can, but I always get asked a question and it's, would you go back if you could and do it again? And the answer is always yes. I don't have to ask for vacation time. I get to be with my kids. I get to do school pickups. I get to make sure they're going to the bus on time. I love just having my Tuesdays back is what we kind of talk about in the franchise world. What does your Tuesday look in 3 years? Like, do you want your Tuesdays back? Are you managing a company? Or are you waking up, going to your 9 to 5 and asking your boss for vacation time for the spring breaks or the snow breaks that we now have in February in California, which is kind of fun. So just think about that too with all the things that we talked about. Yes, these are great questions, but it's such a wonderful freedom feeling when you are your own boss, so the revenue's coming in and you get to kind of pick your schedule after we're almost in year 3 now, right? Year 3? Yeah.
yeah, come May, it'll be year
I'm
3. Yeah, and a lot of people I know are on the road a lot traveling, and life is short, and kids are, those of you who have kids, a lot of our, clients have kids. They're only little once, they do grow fast. And so I know a lot of like people I talk to don't want to be missing those moments that they're currently missing because they're on the road a lot.
Yeah, don't look back in 2 years and be like, I wonder what would have happened if. Just do it in
Yeah.
2026, and then in 2 years you get to look back and say, look what I built. Such
Yeah,
a good
look what I
feeling.
built. And if it wasn't a fit, you can exit, you can sell, and then you can go back. Like, even if you want to, maybe you're like, you know what, I'm a better fit in the corporate world. Like, going and investing in yourself in a business and betting on yourself and trying to build it. And maybe it's not for you. It's not that you failed, it's just not the right fit. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think anyone in the corporate world is going to look at you and be like, oh, yeah, you're, not employable. Like, if anything, now you have a broader skill set. You are showing you're proactive, you're willing to take a risk. I think it shows massive character. And yeah, what better way to build your character than owning a business? So with that, thank you all for listening, and subscribe, share this with a friend who might be at a crossroads. Looking forward to having on a few exciting guests next week. So will you all join?
contact us to see what your best franchise fit
Oh yeah.
is. So we can let you
And
know.
how do they contact us, Morgan?
Go to thefranchiseinsiders.com and click on Kathryn or myself, and then we'll get sent to our landing page and we can do those assessments for you.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone. For those of you listening, if you have any questions or are interested in franchising, please go to thefranchiseinsiders.com. You can find more information about Morgan and my son. We'll see everyone next week.